So Sergio Perez's dad was found unresponsive following the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Many are speculating that this was following Checo's late race crash with Carlos Sainz, though frankly I'd be more shocked at the fact that he was running third. He's okay, I think. We'll find out if I get cancelled for that intro or not. But he wouldn't have to wait long before the Mexican was back to going out in Q2, as the Singapore Grand Prix was right around the corner. Despite the double-header nature of the last 2 weekends, we still have a hell of a lot of news to cover. From Ben Sulayem opening his mouth to Max Verstappen shutting his. And then there's the story that makes you want to pull a Max Mosley. It's the comedy review for the Singapore Grand Prix. So then, news time, and where better to start than Mohammed Ben Sulayem, the FIA president having the fantastic notion that he needed to speak. Big Ben claimed that F1 had to crack down on swearing in order to differentiate between our beloved sport and rap music. I mean, I'm confused as to why this was greenlit as well, but I don't think swearing's the problem here. Oh, and f*** you, by the way. This is kind of the typical response you might expect. Twitter want him to visit one of Trump's golf courses, Lewis Hamilton has pulled out the race card, and Max Verstappen immediately swore in the Thursday press conference. His actions being rewarded with community service, and yeah, he's not doing that, is he? Sky Sports had their own mini protest on this when they accidentally aired a fluff take of Ted's notebook, ending in my now new favourite piece of Ted Kravitz analysis, quote, "Oh f***ing hell, sorry, let's do that again." The other big story was circulating around Daniel Ricciardo. Just a few months ago, the Honey Badger looked set to be driving Sergio Perez's Red Bull, and now his career has the longevity of Max Mosley's head after he pulled the trigger. I already made a video on how RB looks set to announce Liam Lawson for 2025 following this weekend's Grand Prix, but now rumours are circulating that the Kiwi could be promoted even earlier, and this could be Daniel Ricciardo's last race in Formula 1. You probably know how I feel about this already, and what a time for one of my videos to finally age well, but hey, maybe Daniel can put in a performance to convince the higher-ups he's worthy of staying out for the season this weekend. Or maybe he can go out in Q1 and I can go f*** myself. Looks like that's more community service for me. For the final big story, you know what, let's play a game. What's the same about McLaren's rear wing and Kelly Piquet? Any ideas yet? Well, following a confrontation with Max Verstappen, neither of their flaps are what they were before. Rear T-cam footage, we've moved on, appeared to show Oscar Piastri's DRS not behaving quite as it should, flexing on the main straight and making a ton of Dutch keyboard warriors turned Adrian Newey clones very unhappy indeed. Red Bull hounded the FIA until they eventually turned around and said, if we ban it, will you finally shut the f*** up? So yeah, McLaren aren't allowed to use Kelly Piquet anymore. Zach Brown obviously wasn't happy with this news, saying, quote, "McLaren won't eat the poison biscuit." I'll be honest, I haven't got a clue what that means, but trust Zach Brown to go with the food analogy. It's about time we got to FP1 then, and as usual at Singapore, there was quite a lot going on. Working out who was a bit harder than usual, with everyone and their paedophilic uncle choosing to run special liveries this weekend. Not Red Bull though, as paint is too heavy apparently. RB drew some early intrigue when they replaced their Twitter header with some guy's flies. They then unveiled a denim livery, which I'm just convinced is only there to make Daniel Ricciardo want to retire. Doing a much better job with McLaren, who finally honoured the MP44 era with this beauty. These liveries were driven by names such as Senna, Lauda and Hunt. They're all dead, a bit like Oscar Piastri's rear corner in FP1, which ruled him out for most of the session. Finally, Mercedes decided that if they could blend in with the Aston Martins, they could hide how they currently are. The real Aston Martins weren't looking great on Friday, Alonso skirting over the curbs, pushing every button he could to stay out of the wall. I think the guys over there are just doing to their car what I did at university with my faulty radiator. Give it a hard kick once a day, and eventually they'll have to buy out Adrian Newey to get me a new one. Except someone's not got the memo and has just taken to punching Lance Stroll instead. Elsewhere, it was nice to see that Sergio Perez had returned, as he went straight on in the final sector. Pierre Gasly was also going straight, which isn't advisable when you're coming out of the pits. It would be Ferrari on fine form in the morning, however. Charles Leclerc leading Norris and Sainz come the end of the hour. That form would continue into FP2, but this time the prancing horses would be pipped by the McLaren. As night descended around the Marina Bay street circuit, and Franco Colapinto was kind enough to show Alpine what a good F1 car looks like. George Russell was also struggling. The Mercedes driver had almost hit the wall in FP1, and having learnt his lesson, proceeded to drive right into it come the conclusion of the second session. With George's new low downforce package making Toto Wolff look like he'd shit himself, the paddock was now bustling, with some teams that were rather chuffed with their Friday efforts, and others who, well, weren't. And then Sauber, who we all knew would be crap anyway. Saturday's FP3 session was a bit of an odd one then, as it was announced that the new F1 movie starring Brad Pitt would actually be part of the Godzilla franchise. This is Lawrence the Lizard, of no relation to this Lawrence, I think, and gay best friend of Larry the Lizard, who disappeared after being drop-kicked by Fernando Alonso at the 2023 Singapore Grand Prix. Lawrence was therefore out investigating the site of his buddy's disappearance, even coming face-to-face with his killer, before F1 brought out the red flag and Lawrence ran away to resume his running of the Aston Martin Formula 1 team. Seriously, find a photo of these two guys together. Overnight rain had washed the track dry of all of the rubber and Daniel Ricciardo's leftover talent apparently. The Honey Badger and RB, to be fair, looked to be Q3 contenders on Friday. But come FP3, the Australian's Formula 1 car had all the front-end grip of Paul Walker's Porsche. Norris remained on top of the timing sheets, though I'm sure he'll find a way to sound depressed about it. All the while, George Russell continued his great expedition of Marina Bay's back alleys. Things weren't looking so hot in Maranello. The Ferraris looked in contention on Friday, so rather than continuing to find pace overnight, put Charles Leclerc's taxidermised dog in the car. That's actually quite fitting, as come Saturday morning, they were dog shit. 5th and 6th, both a second off the pace, wasn't particularly encouraging coming into qualifying, but at least they kept it out of the wall, unlike Alex Albon here, who turned his Williams into a sparkler. That takes us nicely into qualifying, and a lot of pain, as Danny Rick's potential last Saturday as an F1 driver ended in the Q1 drop zone. The Aussie was bemused at his recent contraction of Logan Sargent syndrome and told the media they'd find him drowned in his ice bath and that he needed Nelson Piquet back for race day. Petition to get Daniel Ricciardo in as the new host of the Comedy Review. With all the attention on RB, it's easy to forget that Sergio Perez's future will be decided after the Singapore round as well. The Mexican had clearly forgotten this too, as he was eliminated from the second session, and his latest excuse was, well, an interesting one.
And it was all about the rear tires. I couldn't get them in the...
Come again, Checo?
The rear tires.
Sorry, one more time?
The rear tires.
Yeah, look, I know they've banned swearing, but you really can't say that in 2024. And I don't know what this has to do with Lance Stroll either. There were surprises getting through this session as well. Fernando Alonso's thirst for more lizard blood allowed him to get into Q3, as Yuki Tsunoda also made it in, slitting Danny Rick's wrists in the process. As we entered the top 10 shootout, it appeared that Ferrari had regained some of their Friday form. However, upon realising that he'd likely end up 10th anyway, Sainz felt he'd rather reshape his gearbox into an F1 authentic side table. Yeah, cue the meme. That left 8 minutes on the clock, enough time for a one-lap shootout in the hunt for pole. Oscar Piastri showed up first with a competitive benchmark before his teammate did him by half a second. The lone Ferrari of Leclerc was next and couldn't even beat the Haas of Hulkenberg. The FIA then rubbed salt in the wounds by exposing that Leclerc had exceeded track limits to achieve this. Verstappen and Hamilton would set lap times good enough for second and third respectively, but no one was touching Lando's attempt out front. He took yet another pole in 2024, which means I'm off to place a bet on Max having the lead by turn 1. Speaking of Verstappen, he wasn't speaking, taking the post-quali press conference as an opportunity to try out his Kimi Raikkonen impression and to protest F1's new no-swearing rule. If only he'd taken this approach a few years ago when he was busy defending racists. Daniel Ricciardo's last day as an F1 driver would open with the team taking his criticisms of the soft tyre on board before fitting them to his car for the start of the race. Up at the front, meanwhile, Lando Norris would retain his lead as Franco Colapinto took the open lobbies line into turn 1, scaring teammate Albon off the road. With British-Argentine relations already at boiling point, Alex wasn't particularly pleased with Franco's actions. In his defence, he has been used to racing Latifi and Sargent over the last few years, so this concept of competition is probably a new one for him. Albon's day was about to get worse when he was overtaken by Daniel Ricciardo. It soon became clear that this was due to an issue on the Williams side, and the 23 car was euthanised early on. Lando Norris was storming clear by this point. However, the temptation of the bottle was never too far away. The McLaren man clipped the wall on lap 29, almost ending his Grand Prix and making Max Verstappen fans come a little. On the subject of the Dutchman, he came out of the pits thinking he'd just been undercut by the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. In reality, he was merely confusing this with yet another Ferrari strategy. Charles really did find himself in a battle with Lewis Hamilton in this one, not on the track, more to do with whose pit wall could act the most like... You know what, take it away, Checo.
The rear tires.
Oscar Piastri's strategy was another interesting one. He found himself being the only front runner capable of making an overtake, swooping around the outside of Hamilton on lap 40, and then Russell the exact same way 5 tours later. Daniel Ricciardo's send-off was going well meanwhile. The team had strapped on some medium tyres to his RB back in 1836, and now the Honey Badger was waving the field by with little to no hope of finishing even in the top 15. He'd make the final overtake of his F1 career, passing Kevin Magnussen, whose triumphant return to the Haas cockpit saw him collide with the wall and send his rear tyre to the gulag. With the laps ticking down, there was nothing Daniel could do to have any wider impact on this race. Or was there? Norris was still doing his best to ruin his third ever Grand Prix win, but in the closing laps, it looked as if the McLaren driver could mark up his first ever Grand Slam. That being when you take pole, lead every lap, which was going to be the hard bit, and taking the fastest lap of the race. With Danny Ric having boxed about 15 times by this stage, the RB team sat back and thought, why not have one more and snag the fastest lap off his old teammate? Ricciardo was flying. It was as if the 2014 Honey Badger was back in that cockpit, and he had tyres 20 laps younger than everyone else. As Lando Norris crossed the finish line to take his third win of the season, DR3 took the fastest lap of the race, which could have been a point if he wasn't down in 18th. F1 were a bit slow to get the highlights package out this week, probably because it was a bit of a challenge to find highlights throughout this one. I do like the Singapore circuit, but its action typically involves the use of a safety car. Since that's still wedged in the Monza barrier somewhere, this isn't one I'll be jumping back to rewatch anytime soon. The championship lead is down to 52 points with 6 races left to go. Ricciardo's fastest lap, meaning all Verstappen now has to do is finish second in every remaining event to seal his 4th title. That would be easy if Norris had Checo alongside him, but Piastri's drive to 3rd is probably the most underrated of the weekend. Meanwhile, Perez couldn't even pass Hülkenberg for 9th. If we have to speculate about Daniel Ricciardo's future after this, then what about Sergio Perez? He's now out of mathematical contention for the title, which, I'll be honest, I thought happened back in Bahrain, is the sole reason McLaren now have a 42-point lead in the constructors, and his sheer presence is sending people to the f***ing hospital. Like, come on, Red Bull. Your PR cock-up has cost Daniel Ricciardo the ending he deserved. Throw the Aussie in the Red Bull for the final 6 races like you've got nothing to lose anymore. Right, now I'm off to have a cry. F1 goes away on a 3-week break now, but I'll be making content throughout that period, so if you enjoyed the comedy review and want to see more, make sure you like the video and hit that subscribe button. A huge thanks to the patrons as well, who get the uncensored version of this video. If that appeals to you, or you just want to help out and support the channel, head over to the links down in the description below. I'll be back, as I say, with a new video very soon, but until then, have a good one.